Hello everyone, welcome back to another speed paint video. This time around it's a patron exclusive, and here I'm going to show you the supplies that I'm going to be using for this speed paint, along with my homemade watercolor sketchbook, along with some Gansai Kuretake watercolor paints. And here I just want to show you like the layout of this sketchbook here, and I really love the way that it looks. It really came out really good. It took me a couple of days to bookbind this by hand. And here you'll see two sketches here that I'm going to be working on for the day, mostly the one on the left. And I'm going to be touching base with y'all in regards to bad art and what I think about those topics. Here I'm going to show you guys that I'm going to be using a dip pen nib, and I'm going to put it together before we get into coloring the sketches that I showed you guys. I'm just going to be prepping my materials here, and let's get right into it. First things first, I've been having this in the back burner for quite a bit of time, so it's going to be a long one. I'm going to be chatting with you today while I prep everything. So you'll see my watercolor brushes, my little pipette to control the water that I'm going to be using for the watercolors, some inks that I'm going to be using to ink everything, some bottles to control and dilute the ink that I'm going to be using, and two jugs of water for my colors. So I'm just kind of adjusting things here and there, and I'll show you the watercolors that I'm going to be using as well. And some of these watercolors were gifts, some of them I bought myself. The green box is a gift from my friend Richie. He sent me this as a pick-me-up ages ago, and I really love this Japanese watercolors as well as the off black colors here. So I just want to show you guys what that looks like. They're super pretty. I cannot wait to play with them a little bit more when I have a little bit more time. And yeah, no, they're gorgeous. This speed paint and this art session, I recorded this prior to me getting hired, so I had time to actually like do this whole like layout situation here. But what are we talking about today? Today we're going to be talking about bad art and how I feel about it. And I think like the best way that I can go about it is kind of just showing you the process of coloring this. In essence, I don't think anybody makes bad art. It's just that we're not skilled enough to recreate what's in our head to put on paper, and sometimes you just need to make a lot of really bad art in order to get to the good art. So we're going to be talking about that in a bit. I just want to show you guys like the color on the water palettes. They're great. They don't function the same way as traditional watercolors do. If you don't dilute them enough, they end up getting really thick and really glossy. They don't necessarily work the same way. So I'm just here going to sort of prep my space and make sure that things are where it needs to be. But yeah, so first things first, like I said, I had this sitting in the back burner for quite a bit of time. I just didn't know really what to do with it because it's a very different kind of video, and I've been meaning to do this for like a patron exclusive or a really big milestone, but at this point I'm just gonna get it out there because it's gonna take 5,000 years for me to actually do it now that I have a full-time job. But essentially I kind of just wanted to touch base when we do get to seeing the sketch. You'll see that I do two very specific characters in this first spread. You'll see on the left is going to be a modern take on Pantyhose Taro from Ranman 1.5, and on the right it's going to be Shinji Matou from Fate Stay Night, or the Fate series. And mostly for this specific speed paint, we're gonna focus mostly on biker Taro, or Pantyhose Taro, because it sort of was this take that we were just sort of discussing with my friend Marissa, because she really enjoys the work from Takahashi Rumiko, I think is her name, the mangaka. The one that did Ranman half, so we're gonna be talking about that. Like I said earlier, we're gonna be talking about art, and quite frankly, if I'm being 100% with y'all, to my patrons, I've done a lot of bad art. There's points of time where I don't draw enough, or I don't do it often enough because life happens, or I'm super tired from work, or in general, I just don't feel like I'm having a good art session, and sometimes that might look like bad art. And granted, I did have a fun time sketching this out. I don't think it's good looking art. It's kind of bad. And like, that could be relative, because most of it is like me not being satisfied with proportions, or the face structure doesn't look right. Like, something about it is super off to me. And it's not like super pristine artwork either. This is a really old artwork from 2016, and I can say with confidence that I've gotten better at drawing people, but that takes practice that I don't necessarily have. And the more I don't invest time into practicing, the worse it's going to look, because people get rusty if you don't practice a skill. And in general, like, bad art could be just like the shorthand version of people dismissing people's artwork, because when you are an amateur and you have all these ideas, you're not really worried about like the skill that you need in order to make your visualization a reality. You're mostly worried about getting the idea on paper. Like, you just want to put it on paper because you have this idea, this thing that you want to create, and you're sort of trying to make it happen on paper. But because you don't have that skill, it might look childish, or it might look not realistic, or whatever. And sometimes people call that bad art, which is not an accurate thing to say, because it's just a lack of skill. It's not that the artwork is like bad. I don't know how else to explain it. Like you just don't have the skill. You have the idea, and the idea might be good. It's just you don't have the skill, and some people dismiss that as bad art. Like for example, if we were to scroll through DeviantArt, there's going to be a lot of artwork there from amateur artists who don't have skill, and it's going to look a certain way. It's not going to be necessarily carrying to your tastes, but it's still artwork nonetheless. I probably spent so many hours on it, or so many minutes, or however it be. But sometimes, like, that's just how people start. It's not going to be looking pristine, because again, it's a skill that you build. But regardless, sometimes, and this is something that I learned in undergrad, like, sometimes you just gotta make a lot of bad ideas to get to a really good idea, and some people call that bad art. Sometimes you just have to suck at a thing before you get good at a thing, which, like, it helps you grow, as long as you're not afraid of making mistakes or doing bad art. Like here, for example, you see me using this dip pen, and I'm not used to this sort of like texture. I'm not sort of used to like how it feels, how it scratches the paper. I'm not used to using like actual pen pressure on it because it's always been like line width, not like me putting pen pressure on the thing. Um, and I'm also not used to using inks and like just doing one single pass. It's different. It looks bad because the sketch underneath looks bad, but also like the application is bad because I'm inexperienced and I'm aware of that lack of experience. So it's kind of like a learning curve, and hopefully once I have my art studio set up in the spare room that we have in the house, I can like sit down and work on traditional media, because that's kind of where I have lots of bad art happen. And I don't know if a lot of artists like mention this, or some of my artist friends do this, but sometimes like people get super caught up in trying to make good art to present to like social media or like a page spread on Instagram or whatever, and like that's paralyzing sometimes. I don't know, like sometimes I just gotta draw really really bad to get sense of an idea, and later on in the speed paint you'll see that after I sort of ink Shinji here, I just kind of leave it as is, because again this is watercolor paper. I'm gonna like swatch out the colors that I want for Pantyhose Taro, and you know, it's just weird. And I like how the sketch looks like in expression wise, but there's something about it that I don't necessarily like. I don't know, it's weird, it's bad. I'm hoping I'm making sense. If not, then I'm so sorry, I'm just rambling at this point. Here you'll see me kind of just wet the paper a little bit and start like doing a very light wash color of his hair, because his hair is like really really dark. And this is where I feel like I messed up, because the paper was not really receptive to like the color. Like the color payoff was weird. It just didn't look the way that I wanted, and also I guess the type of paper didn't help me at all either. Like I'm trying to salvage it, it looks bad. So sometimes like the process or the materials that you use doesn't lend itself to make good art, and it's an idea. I like to hash things out better on paper, because ultimately this is not going to go anywhere. But I don't know, there was a part of me that just wasn't satisfied with how it looked, and granted Marissa was really happy that I drew Pantyhose Taro in like a biker outfit situation, as a modern take on Ranman 1.5. There was something about it that just didn't sit well with me, because again, my standards are different, and I think that's part of the problem of like having bad art days or just doing bad art, is that you as a perfectionist, you want to get to put what's in your head on paper, and sometimes just things don't work out that way. So essentially what I did is, after everything dried, I sort of like the color that I was using, not necessarily like on pigment or like how I was doing it. I just liked the vibe of it. So what I did was I just redid it digitally, to just kind of like show the contrast that even though this looks bad on paper, it looks way better in digital, but also it looks kind of bad too. Because again, the sketch is not very good. The idea is good, just the skill is not there. And I have to force myself to really be okay with it, because if I don't hash out the idea, if I don't practice, if I don't make those mistakes and see how my material works, how my brain works, and ultimately where I lack understanding, then I don't feel like I'm gonna improve. And looking back at this, I know I can draw it better. I know I can do hands better. I know I can do expressions better, and just kind of like re-teach myself how to do portraits. and watercolor and all those other things. But I know I'm gonna be messing up. I know I gotta get back into the groove of things and like really get into it. And sometimes I feel like we don't want to show those mistakes because it doesn't look pretty for people, and that's part of the problem too. Like there's so much pressure to just make it look aesthetically pleasing for others to follow you. And I'm not really sure. Like I'm caught up with that pressure because I want to post whips, I want to post like progress pictures and stuff because I think that people find it interesting and it demystifies part of the process. But like sometimes you're just gonna look crappy. Like things are gonna look crappy. It's not gonna look good. So I kind of just talked myself out of it. It's a little bit rambly. I don't have a script today. It's a hot mess here. Um, but I don't know. Like I like knowing that I can at least record some of these and like show them or have them archived somewhere so I can track my own progress. And I gotta tell myself that it's okay to not be a perfectionist, that it's okay to have bad days of art making. It's okay to be off on your drawing skills because again, it's been a hot minute since I've drew something. Ultimately, it kind of liked the vibe that I was going for. The watercolor really didn't help me, but I was like, you know what? Let me improvise on this. So I basically redrew Pantyhose Taro again on digital to just kind of imitate the picture that I do traditionally. And on one hand, I like better the proportions of like his chest, like the shirt, the hair. The hand looks better, but the face doesn't look good. So this is bad in a different sense. And that's just me being hard on myself, but again, I'm just trying to just make sense of it all. Um it is an improvement and at some point I will redraw like artwork from my past or from when I started to draw to just kind of see the progress, but even in just a couple of like years, because the first drawing was done in 2016, this sketch was done 2018, 2020, give or take. So even then, there's a little bit of progression, and I think that helps me demystify the whole thing. Um, Sorry about that. My parents came in when they know they should not be, but here we are. Anyway, like I was saying, like there is a little bit of improvement. At least like proportion wise. Of course, it's gonna look bad. There's also a lot of artwork from 2016 that I haven't released that I'm still kind of debating whether or not I want to release them at all. Um, but I think I'm just gonna put it as a Patreon exclusive and just kind of go with it. Um, and just kind of like touch on things that are a little bit more personal, I guess. Um, but yeah, I think this will be a little bit for me. This has been a hot mess, but you know what? It's fine. We'll just make do. Um, I think the next video I'm gonna do is another traditional speed paint of like some personal pieces and just kind of like touch base on other topics. So if you enjoy this type of videos, please let me know. If you don't, please also let me know. Like give me some kind of feedback so I can like still kind of see that there's some kind of audience here. Um, and I think I'll see you guys in the next one. I'm just gonna go ahead and compile it and put it on Patreon and let my patrons know about this. Let some of my social media know about this, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye bye, you guys.